Hi everyone, welcome back. I hope that you are ready to move to the next activity today. So today's panel is a group of amazing change makers in our community. Today's panelists include Tori Kirihara, Harmony Divani, Damia Bersong, Grace Lamonte, and Eric Hasafel. And this will be facilitated by Dr. Janice Velasquez Farmer. And at the end of the panel, you will have the opportunity to ask questions. So please send your question into the chat to Dr. Janice Farmer. And the stage is yours.
Thank you so much. So great to be here with you all today. I see that our panelists are coming up onto the stage here. We'll call it the stage. I appreciate, Jess, all the work that you just did with us. I also think that I'm going to need about 12 bracelets at this moment in time, because, you know, when Harmony opened up the space with us, all I thought to myself was like, action. Action is going to be this thing that has carried me through. I want this action. And then Dr. Luca Lewis was on, and I was like, nah, it's got to be leadership. Leadership is the one. And then I just know that each time somebody opens their mouth, I'm going to come up with a brand new word. So if I could just get like 12, I have pretty small arms. I think they'll all fit. Maybe I need to use both arms. I'm not sure, but I am glad you're coming back, because at some point I know we got to get that going and probably narrow it down to that 15 character word or 2 words. So we'll get there. We'll get there, team, right? All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, panelists, for being with us right now. We have a great presentation for you all. I got to meet our panelists the other day. Some of them I've known for a while, and I'm already blown away, and you all get to learn so much more. So I'm going to, instead of talking too much, because I do that a lot, I'm amped up on coffee, I've got good energy going, I'm thinking all of these intentions in my mind, I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves. So I just lost you all. Let's start with Damia. Damia, would you like to introduce yourself?
I knew you were going to pick me first. Hello, I'm Damia Birdsong, she or hers. I'm a former student at Welcome Community College. I'm now at Western Washington, studying political science and choosing between communications and a law degree. But as of now, I've just finished being a legislative intern for the State Board of Community Technical Colleges for the 2020 legislative session. That was amazing. And now I am on to being a liaison for the WASAN 2021 session. And so I'm excited to get started on that with the people over there. And my future goals is to, I really don't know yet. I am tempted to run for some type of representation here in the community, the district. That's been on my mind for a while. So I don't know yet. I'm a little young, but I'm not gonna let that stop me. Other than that, I am just continuing to get familiar with different agencies in Washington State, just trying to help, you know, after all COVID and everything, trying to help stabilize everything again and kind of get a chance to rebuild where some places need to be rebuilt, and a lot of spreading of the DEI training in every institution in Washington. And so hoping to continue on doing that with different agencies, and that's pretty much me in a little bundle.
Thank you so much, Damia. So I have another bracelet in mind. I think it's still under 15 characters, but mine just says now do big things. So thank you so much for another bracelet to add to my arm. Let's go with Eric. Eric, would you mind introducing yourselves to us?
Yeah, hi everyone. Pleasure to be with you all. My name is Eric Hulsefel, he, him pronouns. I currently work at the League of Education Voters. We're an education advocacy and policy organization focusing on bringing better resources and policies to the K through 12 and early learning sphere in Washington State. But before that, I was at a social service organization called Entre Hermanos. We were a Latino LGBTQ organization that focused really around the HIV and AIDS crisis, but also provided other services such as immigration legal services, particularly to asylum seekers from Central America. I'm a graduate from the University of Washington's Public Policy School, where I got my master's. That was 4 years ago that I graduated, and relatively new to Washington, came for grad school. I'm originally from Quito, Ecuador. That's where my family is. My parents live in the US, but all my other family is in South America. In some ways that's also home. I have many homes. As far as future goals, I joined my organization in August and have been very active in the legislative session the last couple months. And for the future, we're really focusing on bringing education training and advocacy trainings to communities throughout Washington. We have offices in Western, Central, and Eastern Washington. And our goal is to teach those that want trainings around education advocacy, what education governance looks like in our state, and how to advocate at those different levels of governance, how to affect change both in their community and on the macro state level, and have specific sessions on different interests, whether it's discipline in schools, racial justice in schools, rural education, data and advocacy, multilingual education. So that's my focus for the next year, is bringing those trainings to as many communities as possible throughout the state. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. So not only do I want to add advocate to my list, but I think I heard a partnership between Zamia and Eric. I feel like your paths are going to cross at some point soon, and we are all going to claim to be part of that. So we all have responsibility for the amazing work that you all do in the future. So thank you very much for that. Next up, let's hear from Grace.
Hi, everyone. My name is Grace. I use they, them pronouns. I went to school at Western, where I graduated in December with a degree in political science and communications. And at Western, I was involved in a couple of different student groups. One of them was Students for a Self-Operated Dining System. We also went by Shred the Contract, and we were a group of students, workers, environmental justice, all sorts of coalitions that came together that were fighting for food justice and sustainable systems on our campus. And so we were working to move away from our current dining provider, which is Aramark, and move towards a self-operated dining system that let students and workers have more control over our food systems. And so I got to do a lot of fun work there with environmental justice. And I also did some work with the Washington Students Association, where we got to lobby for policies that increased accessibility and equity in higher education. And I currently am a labor organizer with the Washington State Nurses Association. And so I get to work on external campaigns that help nurses that have helped us during the COVID pandemic, and make sure that the nurses get equitable wages, good benefits, safe working conditions. It's a really big honor to get to work with frontline workers who have been there throughout this last year. And so in the future, I really want to be able to combine my current work with labor advocacy and my past work on environmental justice, and kind of the intersection of those two paths. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Grace. So I'm adding I gotta figure out how many letters and things are in environmental justice. So we'll figure that out at some point. I'm sure that Jess is already on it. Let's see, how about Harmony? It's great to see you again on the stage.
Hi, my name's Harmony. I use she, her pronouns. I'm Indian Park, Alaska Native, as you probably heard from when I did my poem. Let's see. First off, I'm so happy to be here. All of you guys are so cool. Anyway, I'm a senior at Ferndale High School, and I started my, I really started my advocacy journey over the summer by planning like direct action, like protests. And I helped found Walk and Focus Youth Movement. And then I got voted onto the Walk and Human Rights Task Force. And then from there, my advocacy kind of like grew with me. And now I've really been focusing on bettering myself so I can be like, help people better. And that has looked like I'm doing training and I work with DVSAS, domestic violence and sexual assault services, and I'm a youth peer advocate there. And I've performed my poem like probably around 30 times now for different organizations, including the Washington Education Association. So like showing teachers like this is a problem, and like Indigenous students graduate at like 50% lower than non-Native students, and like you need to get your shit together, kind of. And yeah, and my goal right now is to graduate high school, and then I'm going to Western next year, probably going to get like political science or something in that realm. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Harmony. I am back to do big things, so at least I haven't added another bracelet. And also, at some point, I would love to know just how you are doing this as a senior in high school. And you're right, everybody here is super cool. Yeah, I was not doing these big things as a senior in high school, so can't wait to see what you do in the future. While I'm thinking about that, I want to bring Tori into the conversation. Hi, Tori.
Hi, my name is Tori Kirihara. I am a multidisciplinary visual artist. I was born and raised in Seattle, and I'm back here again. I went to Western for a few years. I studied American Cultural Studies, and that's actually how I know Janice. She helped me with my whole application process to get into Western. But I decided to switch paths, and I actually left Western to go to the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandise out in LA, which is where I got my AA in product development. Since then, since I graduated back in 2016, I moved back home and just really focused on art. I now run an organization which has been around for the last 5, going on 6 years, called The Feels. We do art events in Seattle that really highlight artists of color, and we really are focused on being of service and of help to any local artists, and also doing programs that involve youth of color to kind of encourage them that art is definitely a doable path, and whether that just be for passion or something they want to explore as a career option, we totally support that. So yeah, thank you for having me here today.
Okay, I've added service to my list.
Can I cut you off real quick? Like, everybody is dope here. Like, I want to work with all you guys. I'm gonna get y'all phone number after this. So that's all I wanted to say. Go ahead.
So Mia, you might as well stay unmuted, because honestly, after I was gonna say my thing that you so rudely cut, I'm just kidding. I know Demia too. You know, I was like thinking in my head, I could see everything spinning, because you are connected directly to every single person's interest. So Demia, unmute for me and talk to me a little bit about what inspires you. So the work that you've been doing, the path that you've set yourself on, who inspired you and why did they inspire you?
That's a hard question. So I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. And I moved to Washington when I was a little bit younger. I'm sorry about the noise outside. But that is a hard question. I don't have anyone that really inspires me. I think at most what inspired me, I learn from other people's mistakes. That's the type of person I am. I have to do things over and over and over to learn from it. And so, watching my mom and the women in my family and just my entire family go through the daily struggles. I was once homeless, lived in a car. Winters in Detroit are harsh. We never knew where our food was coming from. And so going through that, and still my family is still very, very much struggling in Detroit. And so going through that really pushed me to kind of want to do this stuff right now. I understand that a lot of people are still going through that have similar childhoods like I have. And for me, my mom really moved me out here, and my sister, because I was a kid that was getting to gang related stuff and all of these activities that would have just, you know, ended the start the cycle again of, either being in jail or pin in the ground. And so my mom decided to move us out here, and ever since then, I have been able to see like what is more out there. Kind of like Tori, what I know, I never even knew what like art was. I didn't know. I was really limited to Detroit school system because they didn't teach us a lot. Because classrooms are overcrowded. I had classes of 60 kids, one teacher, and old books from like 19 somethings, and it was just ridiculous. And so having an opportunity to come out here in Washington and seeing, big houses, seeing black people that's rich, seeing colored people that has an education, it was inspiring. And I want to be that, but I want to keep it authentically myself at the same time, and being able to show, younger kids that are going through similar situations as me, like there's different ways to go out of it. And I really believe that education is power. The people that built this system, they don't want to see you succeed, and they don't want to see you, overcome all those barriers. And one of those bigger things is education. And if I can, sit there and, you know, go after high school, get my degree in 7 years, it's all worth it at the end of the day to show other people, especially in my family, that education is important, and it's always a tool. It's a weapon more than anything.
Thanks, Tamia. And as you keep bringing up education, it gets me thinking, Eric, you do education advocacy. So in your line of work now, like what are you seeing as hot topics in education advocacy? And what would you say, how would you relate that back to our students that are with us today at the conference, and some of our students from the school district are here? How would you relate like everything that's going on right now back to their experiences that they're having right now?
Yeah, I think, the last year was super tough on everyone in the education sector. I mean, I don't think teachers like teaching, over Zoom. I don't think people like learning over Zoom. I mean, there were certain advantages and flexibility to folks, but by and large, I think it was very taxing. Obviously trying to figure everything out on the go. I manage a program in a school in South Seattle as part of my work. And every week they're trying to figure out something new, like how do we bring back fifth graders, how do we bring back the middle schoolers, how do we create like safe ventilation. Just every week is a new kind of challenge that we hadn't seen in a while. So I think that's one aspect that we're experiencing, and then what will next year look like, and what will the new normal look like. I think it highlighted a lot of the big inequities in our education system. I had wealthy parents tell me their students were doing better than ever. And then there was parents telling me this was a total disaster for them, and their school was failing them, and they weren't communicating with them. They weren't communicating in the language that they preferred at home. And so really highlighting those inequalities. I think also with the racial reckoning in the country, with the murder of George Floyd, I think school safety, and that word is used differently by different people, but being able to go into your school and feel safe, and not feel like the administration of your school is out to get you, and be able to learn. and not feel like you have to look behind your back or that you're in conflict with your teacher. I think that's been one of the biggest changes, is that that's more on the minds of people now. How do we address that school safety? How do we make, students feel safe in their environment? And, I grew up in a very violent high school, and, we had, some people call student resource officers, SROs, CROs, and they were often used to oppress the children in our school. They had tasers and they used them against students. And so there's a lot of that discussion going on around schools. What's the role of a student resource officer, and should they have any sort of authority over how students behave in the school, and if so, what? School discipline. I work with a group called the School to Prison Pipeline, and we're trying to adjust policies and legislation around school discipline. And one of the things that we see is that things like school suspension is used disproportionately against Black and Brown students and students with disabilities, and even heightened for Black and Brown students with disabilities. So trying to address those things, I think that's our most pressing challenge, is that any student can go into their school and feel safe and supported. So there's a lot to do there. These are big systems in the education sphere, but I think, with community, with the youth voice at the table, there's a lot that we can get done in this state.
Thanks so much. That was a lot to chew on too, a lot to chew on. So definitely a big way for us to continue a conversation about education, and especially at a conference like Students Leading Change, knowing that there's so many different venues that every individual can take to be an advocate, right? So I'm thinking about Tori and Harmony. Tori is an artist using her art to do this work. And Harmony, you opened the entire conference using your art to do this work. So Tori, tell me a little bit about your educational process and how you've really utilized art to send these messages out into the world and into the universe.
Yeah. So with art, it kind of started off as like me showing the world my art to just kind of express the personal things that I was going through. And then, over the last 5 years since I've been back and really been doing the work with my organization, is that I've realized it can translate into so many different things, like you're saying, educational purposes and stuff like that too. We've really just tried to use art as a way to really showcase all the things, whether that be good or bad, personal or social justice issues, or things that are just going on in the world. We've seen all of it come through and funnel through the events that we put on, and just, our own personal journeys through art and what that really looks like. And for me personally, art is always involved in pretty much anything that I do now. So, specifically with things that have to do with social justice issues or racial inequality matters, like I've tried to make that more apparent in the work that I do. I've done a lot of community art projects since COVID and everything in the Seattle area, and that really kind of inspired me to involve that with my own personal work as well. I do a lot of stuff through social media, like a lot of brand campaigns with different brands through my personal account. And I've noticed that I've been able to incorporate things that I'm passionate about and feel strongly about that have to do with a lot of the racial inequality issues or social justice issues, and finding a way to include that in the other works that I do. And I think it's important for people to know that that's definitely doable. And I think sometimes with social media and things like that, people oftentimes think that the two don't always mix together, or it's hard to do that if that's not really what you represent. Because to be honest, I didn't really think of myself to be a social justice advocate or anything along those lines, just because, you know, I feel the way I feel or express the things I feel strongly about, but I never really put myself in that category. But I think there's different levels to it, and there's different ways to go about it. Just finding how it works for you and what, you know, that really looks like is important.
Thank you for sharing. And I think it's also really important to remember, especially for all the students in the room, that it's okay to change your mind, right? You've demonstrated that just in your story. Sometimes we set our paths in one way, and it's okay to change your mind. And look what has become of that for you. So thank you for sharing that inspiration with all of us. And thinking about how maybe you didn't always think that you were a social justice advocate, and bringing it back to Grace's story. Grace, when you were talking about environmental justice and the work that you were doing at Western as a student, like what was that fight all about for you?
Yeah, so I, do not have a science background. And when I went to Western, I really, I didn't really think about environmental justice as something that I could get involved in, because I thought like, I'm not a science person. Like, I don't know the details. I should just kind of stay out of this. But when I started getting more involved, I realized that environmental justice really permeates every other aspect of social justice. Like, environmental justice is an issue that disproportionately affects people of color and the prison industrial complex. Like, it's a feminist issue, it's a labor issue. Like, environmental justice is something that everyone should get involved in. And so, I had some really amazing mentors that kind of took a group of us under their wings. And I was just like a baby freshman walking onto campus. And it was the club fair, and I saw some people saying, hey, don't you think that the food we eat should be produced in a way that doesn't exploit people? And I said, yeah, I do. And they said, okay, great. Like, you can help us advocate for that. And so it was really as simple as some people talking to me and being like, this is something that involves everyone. And this is something that anyone, can and should do. And so that's kind of what started my interest in environmental justice. And then I recently, I was an intern with the Washington Environmental Council as well. And while I was there, that just, continued to remind me that, like, you don't need to be a science person and you don't need to know everything to care about the environment that all of us live in, right? It's no one is exempt from the effects of the environment. And so it's something we should all really care about.
And I would say that that does make you a science person, but science does not need to be defined by others, right? And Harmony, you're getting excited about the environmental justice conversation. So go ahead and unmute, because I want to know, like, what does it mean for you as, you are a senior in high school, you're on a panel with some folks that are not that much older than you and doing big things. So talk to us a little bit about how that feels. And when you get excited about the environmental justice conversation, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, so environmental justice was like one of the first things that I was interested in. Like, I was in like kindergarten, and me and my friends made these like stickers, and we went around Bellingham and put like "Don't pollute our ocean" stickers and all of like the storm drains and stuff, like in kindergarten. And I remember like I don't remember exactly how I found out about it, but I was like, dude, like, we all live on this planet. How come like not everyone is caring about this planet, And then that was like one of my first issues that like really sparked my interest into advocacy. And then I'm just really interested in environmental issues because as an Indigenous person, I feel like really connected to the earth. And there's no environmental like, we can't have environmental, like, I can't remember, think of the word right now, without Indigenous sovereignty. Like, they're like as connected as could be. And yeah.
And I think it goes back to your original message, right? So we can't do land acknowledgements that don't have some sort of action behind it. And I know that it's a very common thing to do right now, but I think that your message was so powerful, and what you just said goes right along with that, right? So where we literally invest our time, our money, our efforts, it will really impact the way that the earth is, like just is, right? So think about that. I want to make sure that for everybody joining us today, if you have a question, feel free to throw it in the chat. Some questions that, I mean, I have tons of things. I want to just like sit in a living room and hang out with all of you. Tamina, you're unmuted. What do you have for us?
I keep unmuting because like everybody, like, you know, I'm in one certain box where like you guys just keep talking. I'm just like, I'm vibing with all y'all, like, honestly. But for me, I was just gonna say for the high schoolers, or even just the students that's in this room, I would say that it's honestly just to get started. Like, get started. That's all I want to say. Just get started. Like, you don't have to have a degree. You don't have to know all this stuff, X, Y, and Z. Like, honestly, I go into rooms and not know. Like, I go into rooms, classrooms, whatever, and think I really don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm saying. I just speak from my heart, honestly, and my experience, and that's what you bring to the table. That's what makes everybody unique. And I would just say, just start. Like, it. Even if in a place like this in Linden, Ferndale, like, I know that the high schools are way different from, you know, where I went to high school, but at the same time, you know, I always say that I go into rooms ready to mess up stuff because, you know, everybody not gonna like what I say, and I just keep it 100, and I would just say just go for whatever you feel that you have to do to, you know, live comfortably, but also think about other people living comfortably. You know, racism and just be treated. It's an elementary, you know, basic understanding of treat people how you want to be treated. And if you don't like how something is, just change it, you know, by voicing your opinion. That's all I wanted to say.
She said that's all, as if she didn't just say everything, right? So to me, it's like, that's all. But we're all sitting here like, oh. So, you know, based on what you just said to me, let's hear from our panelists. Where did you start? Right? What was that moment? Where did you actually get started? And let's start with Tori.
Let's see. Started in which part? Okay. Like, sorry.
Any part that you want to talk about, like what was the catalyst for, I guess, what you're doing now?
Like I said, it kind of started off on just a personal level. After I moved back from college, I was going through a really rough time, and I was so confused because I had already switched like from Western doing American cultural studies to completely changing to something on the other end, like doing fashion. And I was just so lost because I feel very passionate about certain things, and I've luckily been able to tie them all together somehow. But it really just started because of a personal journey. I was going through a lot of stuff when I moved back, and art was really the only thing that was making me feel good at the time. And it was, for the first time, like anything negative that I was feeling was translating in the like best and most positive way possible. And so when my art journey began, it really opened up a lot of other doors for me and really opened my eyes to a lot of other things that I felt super passionate about. You know, I will say though, during the pandemic and since COVID, you know, everything that's just kind of been happening has encouraged me to find my voice a little bit more, especially revolving around things, you know, like when the George Floyd protests started happening and stuff like that. You know, I think a lot of people have their own personal opinions and feelings towards things like, you know, that have been going on and been really put out there for a lot of people and opened up a lot of people's eyes, you know. But I think for a lot of people too, it's, like I said, help them kind of find their voice and let them stand firm on what they believe in and being very vocal about it, which is kind of where I found mine too. And that led into, you know, just being more vocal and an advocate for all of those things, you know, racial inequality issues. I've really made it a point to include that in a lot of the topics of conversations with the art organization as well. We've really highlighted a lot of artists of color, and that's us doing our part for the bigger picture, you know, and it looks different for everyone. So everybody here does different things, and it's just really finding where your place is to be a voice and an advocate for things that you feel extremely passionate about. Because if we were all doing, you know, the same thing, the amount of change that we've created wouldn't be the same, I don't think. So
Thank you so much. And I think you're so right. I guess one thing that I'm thinking for myself, you know, if I was in high school, or even when I finally got started on a college journey, is I would have thought to myself, I don't know what I'm passionate about. And so hearing your voice is like, it's really great, because like Tamia, you said you walk into a room and you're like ready to tear stuff up, right? And I love that. I don't remember when I had that, right? So Eric, do you have a moment when you felt like, yeah, this is when I started, or this was the catalyst for all the things that I want to do in my life?
I think the like social justice movement was that seed was planted in me early. So a lot of credit to my family. My grandma and my aunt helped run an orphanage in Ecuador. And so, you know, being young and seeing kids that didn't have a home that were in this orphanage, like, I think that had a deep impact on me growing up. And then, you know, going to a low performing school, like, you know, I think I was robbed of certain academic privileges, but was given a lot of other privileges in that I saw what it looks like to live in a minority district, and what it is to have, you know, I lived in a rural area, what rural poverty looks like. And so just seeing all those aspects of the US that a lot of people don't see. You know, people that have lived their entire lives in a city don't see rural poverty. People that are in rural areas don't see what urban poverty can look like. And, you know, there is this urban rural divide in our country in some ways that's having a huge impact on us. So just being able to see those two sides of life, I think just, yeah, you know, someone was talking about, or it's been kind of a theme that, you know, just get started. You don't necessarily need a title. You know, I think you're an expert in your own life, and applying that to advocacy is important. When you're able to be like vulnerable with people and speak from the heart and experience, that can have deeper impacts on a room than, you know, just reading off a paper, a bunch of data. You know, legislators hear from people all the time, but there's certain stories I think that break through. And they're personal, they're raw, and you know, it's true struggle that sometimes breaks through. So using that, I think, to drive your work, and then, you know, you'll get the professional and educational experience along the way. But you need that kind of personal drive, I think, and passion, to go through the grind of school and go through the grind of, you know, grad school, if that's what you choose. And, you know, sometimes you got to work your way up in the professional realm too. You know, the first job I got out of grad school, I had to do a little bit of everything. It wasn't the perfect role. But, you know, I built experience, and then a couple of years later, really found my sweet spot as far as like my professional role goes. So yeah, starting with that personal passion, you know, being in good environments, being willing to be vulnerable, and I think humble, that really takes you a long way.
Thank you so much. I think that those big words that you use, like vulnerable and passionate and all those pieces, again, bring me right back to Harmony. Harmony, I think that your opening has really laid a great foundation for this entire conference. And I have heard it before, so I'm so excited to hear it again. I know that I'll probably hear it 30 more times in the next year because you're everywhere right now. So because everyone is doing a lot of advocacy work, advocacy takes a toll on you. And so I want to hear from you, Harmony. Like, I'm thinking about how you're doing advocacy work as a senior in high school. What does that look like? Like, what does it look like for you that probably most people aren't talking about? Like, what are the parts of advocacy work that's difficult? And second part of that is, how do you take care of yourself in this process?
That's a really good question. And actually, so in the beginning of the school year, I was like so focused on my advocacy work that I was completely ignoring myself and my education. Like I think in the first semester I went to school like maybe like 2 days. Like it was like I was completely ignoring school. And I realized that in the short run, while I might have been helping people, it wasn't sustainable in the long run. And there's this like mindset belief, it's called like 7 generations, and it's where you're intentional in your acts to the point where what you're doing today is beneficial and has good impacts on 7 generations ahead. And I'll be the first person in basically my entire like bloodline to go to college, and I realized that by ignoring myself and ignoring my education, that I was not having a good impact on 7 generations ahead of me. And that was like, that really like hit me, and I realized that I needed to prioritize like myself in the moment and my education in the moment so I could have a better lasting impact on like the future generations to come. And that, I think that's one thing that a lot of people don't realize, is that it's like really time consuming, and it's also like when you're doing like pretty cool things, it's like hard to see the importance of school, because I was like, why does this matter if I'm doing like this? Like this is really cool. And yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say.
Can I
Every
add
student
something?
group. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Harmony, I really appreciate what you're saying about self-care. Something that I learned as an advocate is that self-care is not just taking a bath and giving yourself a face mask. Like self-care can be really hard sometimes. It can be really hard to like be intentional with how you're taking care of yourself so that you don't burn out. Like it can be really easy to burn out and to just be like, I'm exhausted. And that's why, you know, being really intentional with your work and making sure that this is something that you're prepared to do for the long run is so important, so that you're not, you know, just doing short sprints. Like this is a marathon. And so yeah, I just wanted to add, like, being intentional with your self-care. And you know, self-care isn't just buying yourself nice things. Like it's asking for help from your friends and people you trust. It's being kind to yourself. And it's being prepared to do this for the long run. So I just wanted to add that.
For sure.
Thank you.
One thing I learned is that you can help so many more people and have such a bigger impact when you're not running on empty. Like when you're taking care of yourself first, you can help, like you can do so much more.
Thank you both. And Grace, you can come off mute again because you were up next anyway, in my mind, and you jumped in. So that was perfect. I'm still like, you've talked about the self-care part of that, but if we go back to the, what does it look like for you and your advocacy that maybe people don't realize is advocacy? Because your work is pretty specific, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that relationship building is advocacy and talking to your community is advocacy. Like getting to know your neighbors and the people that help us, like having a conversation with them is work, right? And so, you know, in my work, connecting nurses across the state, the biggest thing that I've learned how to do is to listen. Like when you're building a relationship with someone, it's not just you talking at them. It's not you assuming that you know what they need. It's you sitting down and like asking, how can I help make your life better? And you listen to them. And that's something that I think took me a while to learn. You know, I was really excited to just get in there and get going. And, you know, one of my mentors said to me, like, you are really good at talking. You need to be just as good at listening. And that was something that really stuck with me. And so I think for people in advocacy, just realizing that like relationship building and listening to your neighbors is really important, valuable work that we should all be doing.
Ooh, I'm gonna let that one just sit for a moment.
Could I add something?
Yeah.
Going off of what you said, yeah, listening also, but being able to, I would say, sit there and come in with a blank mind, because it's so easy nowadays to just label somebody as this and that, and then you start to kind of block off everything else that they say because they are this thing. I see a lot in the 2020 election. You had a lot of Trump supporters, and a lot of people couldn't sit across the table from a Trump supporter because automatically it came with racist, or some every other thing that came with that. A lot of people dismissed a lot of people like that. And I always say that if people come in with a blank mind, that is when you honestly get the most out of the conversation. Like, if you can sit there and listen to exactly what the person is saying and hearing their story, despite of like whatever they said or whatever they labeled themselves as, you can really learn from them, and then learn at the same time yourself how much you can withhold, and kind of give back, and then allow them to also hear your story in a good environment.
So, and Harmony, who I'm sure will pop back in here in a minute, is going to be a college student. Demi is a current college student. And for those of you who've already been through college, I just, one thing that I've always told my students that wanted to be, like, they were just saying, I want to be an activist, I want to be an activist. And I would always let them know, like, the greatest activism that you could do is graduate, right? Because this system is not actually made for us. So when we graduate, that is such a huge part of this. So Harmony's words were so important there. That is self-care, and that is huge activism. And then moving along, that it is going to impact us for the next 7 generations at minimum. So that's so huge. I'm trying to buy a little bit of time to see if she'll pop back in here. Maybe I'll go on to my next thought. I want to remind everyone that the chat is open for questions. So feel free to throw your thoughts in there. You're all getting some props in there. Oh, that was a big one. Ruby, do you want to unmute, or do you want me to read this?
Yeah, I can unmute. I'll just talk about what I was saying in my question.
Sure.
So I was wondering how you balance the ideas of like reform versus abolition, specifically in education and environmental justice, but also in all of our systems, all of our, like what I listed, our economic systems and our education system. I feel personally that they are all such fundamentally oppressive systems that a lot of times trying to reform them is kind of like putting a band-aid on a bullet hole. And like I in terms of the education system, my mom is an elementary school teacher, and she's been very active and definitely been an advocate. She's always in union meetings, and it's very frustrating to see so little change and to see her spend like hours and hours and hours of her time just to be not listened to by people who are higher up. And like it feels like she doesn't have the power that she should have. So I'm interested if you guys like if you think about like the idea of abolition versus reform in your own work and how that affects you, and if you ever feel like specifically, I personally plan on going into academia. I would like to be a professor or something, but I still feel this sort of guilt and apprehension because I know that the education system has so many flaws that I worry that I'm actively participating in that system. Yeah, that was a lot of ideas, but I want to hear what you guys have to say.
Yeah, I can go first because I have some thoughts on this. I think, there's many approaches to how we do reform. I think sometimes you can look at it like a really old house that it's going to be more work to try to repair than to tear down and build a new one. And that goes to some of the, whatever you want to label it, if it's abolition or, complete tear down. There's been, just for instance, there's been police departments in this country that, they were so broken that there was no hope for reform, and they were, just started anew, basically. You can apply that to other systems and other institutions as well. But I think, you can also be an advocate within the system and try to change it within. I think the key is you can't do it alone. And we talked about self-care and community and all that. And that kind of goes hand in hand. There's people that are extremely wealthy and influential, but for the rest of us, we have to, approach this work through community and building coalitions. And so, going into it, and especially when we're talking about this is a kind of marathon versus a sprint, you have to take care of yourself. You have to build coalitions. And then, when you're looking at the whole thing, if you're just like looking up and you're like, wow, this is a enormous system that has no hope, you got to start with the little pieces. Okay, how do I change this? How do I get on this committee? How do I get my friend on this committee or my colleague on this committee? Okay, they said they need more data. How do we get the data? I got my partner like a symbolic gift recently because she gets really overwhelmed by these sorts of things. And the way I approach the work is just like each hurdle, like that sport. You just got to approach one hurdle at a time, because if you look at the whole kind of track ahead of you and the 10 hurdles in front of you, you're going to trip. So just approaching each step one by one, and with community and self-care is one way, I think.
I think Eric just answered that perfectly. For me, I was going to say similar thing, but I really wanted to focus on your first part of your question, the reform versus the abolition. I think that is something that we all still are trying to figure out. But I think the intent of what if you know your product, if you know the foundation of what you're trying to, reform, I believe that through the theme and through your message, you can be so very clear of when it's the same thing as if when people hear, defund the police, they think straight up, they're taking away the police. But if you really hear within those words, defund the police, no one's ever, if the message was clear of the process of, they want to reallocate the funds for policing. I think when you are clear and when your message is clear and you know exactly what you are trying to sell people, then the abolition part of it never comes into the question. And the reforming, as what Eric said, is to build on what you already have. A lot of people, here we feel so hopeless, but now you're seeing these weeks of, Pakistan and Israelis, all of that going on in a different, it feels like a whole different world over there. And we never stop and appreciate what country we live in and kind of see that we have a foundation that we can build on. And sometimes it feels so hopeless, but if it goes back to the thing of, do you have a passion for this, or are you just here to be here? You really have to sink, and you have to take the beatings, because I sit down and I have been in rooms where I've not been welcomed, and I've had to sit in my Blackness and hear people speak to my Blackness and their whiteness and say, you know, all these things that they have no experience about. And I have to sit there and listen and listen and listen. And then after swallowing it, I have to speak up and for all people of color and say what really is meant to be said. And so if you can sit down and you know stand tall after all of that, after all the hopelessness, I feel that you will be able to really do what you can in your experience. And it only takes one person. You know, I got to college and the first teacher I had was Janice. I thought I was going to fail college. Like I thought it was going to be impossible. It was going to be hard. I got to her class. She was my first teacher ever. And it starts out with one teacher, honestly. One teacher can flip the whole trip for one student. Like I've had so many teachers that have made a footprint in my life forever. And in their classroom, they didn't look at the whole school. They said, when you are in my classroom, you're in my classroom. Like that's all I can do as a teacher is to make an impact when you're in my class. And that's what Janice did to me. And she had the opportunity to do that continuously outside of her classroom as well. And so I would say, yeah, just focus step by step, even if it takes so long, it exhausts you. I think it's going to be worth it after a while. It only needs to be that one person that you have to touch to really make a change.
You didn't follow that up with, that's all I want to say. Just want to throw that out there. You know, let me add, first, let me say that Harmony's having some internet issues. So we're going to try to, if she can type, then I'll help, or she's also able to type to all of you. So I feel bad that Harmony can't verbally join us for the rest of this. So let me add, if I may, one more thing to the abolitionist versus reformative approaches. Something that could be really useful in thinking about. I've been doing this work for a long time in equity and diversity and education specifically. And I've grown up as an advocate, and just like the past couple of years, because I've learned so much about how this work can be enhanced. One thing that I've learned is that multiple perspectives are needed. So while some folks might be yelling, abolish this, and some folks might be yelling, reform this, every approach is needed if we expect to see our society change. So I've learned that because I've always been a person that wanted everybody to feel good in the room, you know, and then there are other folks that are like, no, we want some people to feel what it feels like to be us. And now I know we need all of these ways to work together. So I don't think it's an or. And so Ruby, to get back to your question, I'm thinking like, for myself, there are some systems that we need to flat out abolish. And that abolitionist perspectives helps us really start to pick apart what can we completely get rid of, while what are the other parts that can be reformed. And so I even think in this panel alone, you have somebody who fully uses art to do advocacy work in equity and racial inequities, right? Then you have folks that are thinking like, okay, we got to do this from the educational perspective. We have Harmony who can do whatever she wants in the next 10 years, right? And so can everyone else. Like your paths might change. All of these ways are needed. And so while you might take one road, another person takes another road, coming together is going to be that key part. So even in this, like if this were my team right here, I know that we're going to do big things in this community in a couple of years. I've also learned that as a person who works in education, the folks who work in the community, like we're not always talking to each other, and we both have a massive amount of resources. So I learned that recently too, because I went to a community organizer event and I was like, whoa, I have nothing to offer here. I had no idea they had all these resources. So again, we all need to work together to make any specific changes to our entire structure, right? So again, go back to that house idea. You can tear down the house, but if you leave the foundation, you're just building on top of that rocky foundation. Sometimes you need to take it all out. You need to start, dig up the plumbing because there might be some rusty parts, but also sometimes you've got a solid foundation. You just need to rebuild the house. So every little system is different. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I feel like, man, if I could like hire you all and we could be one big team, we would be a solid team because we all have different approaches. I did see that there is another question in the chat. Satya, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Sure. Hi. I was listening to everyone and I was just realizing you're all involved in these huge, incredible things, and it's so inspiring. And that's really what I want to do just with my life. But especially when I moved to Bellingham this year, which is a place that has all these incredible programs and organizations to help to get involved and make this necessary change. And it's all just felt really overwhelming. And I'd like to know how to start in a way that can lead to making big change, because I do try to do things, but I know it's not enough. I know I need to be putting more effort and time into it, but it feels sort of like there's so much and it gets like scary. And I'd love to know how you guys started and how you would recommend like getting started.
And can you tell us, are you a college student, somebody from the district?
No, I'm a high school student. I'm a sophomore.
Great, thank you. Panelists, anybody want to take this one on?
I would just say, I think all of us, kind of like Eric was saying too earlier, like it has to start from a point of passion too, or something that you're kind of directly feel strongly about. So it really, like also what Janice was just saying, there's so many parts to the bigger picture and they're all important and tied together in some way. So it doesn't matter if, you want to take the art path or you want to take the educational route or, whatever that may be that you're into. I think if you think too deeply into, because it can always be, I'm not doing enough or there's more that I can do. That's, I think, the place that I've been in a lot too is, wow, I could really be doing more X, Y, and Z. But it's like, it's the little things that matter. And, the whole thing versus it's a marathon, not a sprint. The little things matter in getting started. So whatever that little step may be, if that's you just doing more reading or research or, talking more with people in your community, like all of that will contribute to the bigger picture and you contributing to the change that you want to see, and it'll tie along with everything. I think the thing that's gets lost a lot is, like we said, the bigger picture, and it takes consistent work. Even the work that you think is like little or doesn't feel that big right now, it's all important in the end. Like, Ruby was saying she's a little bit nervous to get into taking the route of getting into education because it's really like discouraging with, all of the broken system. But it's like, we have people like Eric and other people in education who are consistently like there to do the work. And even in the rough patches and, when everybody's not on the same page or doesn't have the same mindset, just coming to a place of understanding that we're all trying to get to the same place. So any work that you do, big or small, I wouldn't think of it in that capacity, just like doing it.
Thanks, Tori. How about Grace? How would you answer that?
So something that has really popped up during the COVID pandemic is networks of mutual aid. And if people haven't heard that word before, mutual aid is kind of just the idea of community support and, people from the community giving what they can and taking what they need. And so if you want a really concrete step to start in Whatcom County, there's a lot of really great mutual aid pages. So I help run Whatcom Student Mutual Aid, where students can ask for financial support from the community. And it's really amazing to see people give freely with no strings attached, and people, receive that aid. and so, that's one way, is really leaning into those systems of mutual aid and community support and getting really involved. And so, other things people do in the community is they'll have bake sales and garage sales that will raise money for different community organizations, especially during the summer. And those are really cool community events. And so I think what it comes down to is just kind of researching the different things that are going on in your area. And you don't have to go, dive in head first and organize a bunch of meetings and speak at a bunch of rallies. You can just, follow their Instagram page and keep up and see what they're doing. Yeah, and I also just want to say that I think it's really amazing how dedicated and involved high schoolers are, because I was not this aware as a high schooler, and it's just really honestly inspiring to see so many high schoolers that want to make these changes. Yeah, I just wanted to add that at the end.
Thanks, Grace. And I think that too. I'm like, man, I was not doing any of this stuff as a high schooler. I want to share from Harmony that the first event she planned was a small vigil in Ferndale. 30 people showed up, and it was great. She never thought it would turn into starting an organization. And so the best advice would be to just start and follow the opportunities. I can share that I never considered myself an equity advocate. It really started because my neighbor in college said, hey, there's a FASA meeting, which is the Filipino American Student Association. And she dragged me to it, and I was kicking and screaming the whole entire way. But we literally played musical chairs at that meeting. It was embarrassing. But because I decided, like, okay, well, that was a waste of my time. How can I change that? It led to everything else that I'm doing now, right? And so it's that, what was that catalyst? Well, it didn't even start with me, and Harmony said, I planned a vigil, 30 people showed up, now it's an organization, right? Tori has turned her passion for art into her work right now. And so there's so many different ways, like everyone has just said, like, I think, Damia, you started this, start somewhere. So just know that everything that you're doing that has this in mind as an end goal is really part of the process. So thank you, panelists, for all this incredible work. In just 3 minutes, I'm going to hand this conversation back to Jess, who's going to walk you all through this idea of the intention bracelet. Before then, there's a question from this list of questions that I was given. It's a really easy one, so we're going to go with the easiest one. If you could solve one issue in the world, what would it be? No big deal, just think on that. You have 3 minutes to think about it. Harmony, you can type your answer into the chat, and we're gonna start with Damia. One issue, what would it be? Change the world.
I will say right now, the thing I am trying to change is generational wealth. I have built a business that I am going out there and teaching, younger kids how to start a business. Business helps you. And that's why I was like Tori, when Tori started speaking, I was like, oh man, that's dope, because I do fashion, and I have a platform where I address the thing of, intersectionality, where everybody has struggles. And so that's the thing, generational wealth. I think I would change that.
Can you change that for me, like right now? That would be great. That'd be great. How about Eric? One thing, fix the world. What's it going to be?
I think education is like an obvious one. So I won't say that one, but I do think education is like the great equalizer. But I think outside of that, just like consumption, we have to do a better job of, what we consume and how we consume it and how much we consume of things, because everything else is irrelevant if we don't have a healthy planet to live on. So I would say just, being more conscious of our consumption and our habits.
I apologize right now for the amount of food that I eat on the daily right now. So you've all heard it. My consumption is really, really, really big. Tori, fix the world for us?
Oh man. That's funny. I was gonna say generational wealth too. But geez, That's not a small question at all.
I know.
Yeah, generational wealth, I think I'm just trying to, wow. Then I heard consumption and I'm like, consumption sounds great too. Can it be less of more of like a feelings thing? Like
Yeah,
maybe
you can get
if we
anything
could
you
turn
want.
the world into people being more compassionate and kind and bring it all back down to like we're all humans. The world moves so fast now and times are just changing so much. And I think like, and I always go back to it and it sounds ridiculous, but like social media plays such a big role in the way life moves now, you know, everything, literally everything. And I think if people realize that at the end of the day, those things are not real life and we all come back down to earth and realize we're all humans and really the way to happiness and all good things is through being a kind and compassionate human being, we will get so much further.
Thank you, Tori. What I heard was world peace.
Yeah.
Grace, how would you save us?
Okay, so I was thinking about this and, you know, stick with me, but something I've been thinking a lot about is rest recently and how tired people are all the time of grinding and constantly moving and going. And especially when there's a pandemic outside and we're asking students to perform and workers to perform. And I think that our world would be a lot better if we could take a step back, pause, and breathe. And we could, you know, be like, we don't always have to be hustling to profit off of a hobby, right? We can take a nap. We can not check our email at 11:30 at night. We can connect with ourselves and appreciate ourselves and refuse to kind of give in to all the messages we get about constantly needing to go, 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 and we can stop. And so, you know, I don't think that'll fix all the world's problems, but I think it would help a lot of people if they realize that, you know, they do not exist on this earth to just pay bills and advance in their career field, right? Like we have a purpose outside of that and we can take a step back and nap, I think.
I like that. I like the take a step back and nap. That is fantastic. I'm hoping that Harmony will get to answer this question for us when she's able to come back in. I'm going to hand this conversation back to Jess so that y'all can narrow down all of your lives into one 15-character bracelet. But before I do that, thank you so much for this incredible conversation. Thank you for sharing your stories with us. It's been really a pleasure for me to get to see you all and meet you all. Jess, how are you feeling? This is a great group, right?
Oh, it's such a great group. There's so many powerful words spoken. It's so exciting. And thank you all so much for sharing your paths and journeys with us and your truth today so thoughtfully. Thank you. So I'm going to do another, we're just going to breathe real quick. I hope that's all right. I know we're like doing a lot of talking and thinking. So take a second to kind of come back into our bodies in case we've left the building, or in case, you know, there's a lot running around in your mind. You're like, oh, now I got to change the world. Like, so we're just going to take a breath. And then I'd love to check in with you all and see from today, after this panel, what you'd like to set as your intention today. So we'll start by just, we're going to take a quick stretch. You're just bring one arm over your chest and take a deep breath and inhale here. Get a lot of tension right between your shoulder blades, right? When you're at the computer for a long time. So take another breath here. And then other side. You'll bring other hand over your chest, the whole arm, and breathe. And just go to bring the breath right between those shoulder breaths, just like a little bird wings. Just breathe right to the back. All right. And then bring your hands down. You can shake out your hands. And we're going to take just 5 breaths here. We'll inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth. but we'll close our eyes. So just for a moment, I'm gonna ask you to find your way to a comfortable seat and allow your eyelids to fall closed just for a moment. And just check in with the body and notice maybe where you might be holding some tension, and just check in. There's no wrong way for the body to be in this moment. And we're gonna breathe just right here in space together. Let's try it. We'll inhale on a count of 4, exhale on a count of 4. I'll snap along to keep some time. Here we go. Inhaling and exhale. And inhale and exhale. Deeper breath. Inhale all the way and exhale fully. 2 more breaths, inhaling deeply and exhale, let the shoulders go. Inhale, relax the muscles in the face. And exhale, let the shoulders drop away from the ears. And come back to your natural breath. When you're ready, allow the eyelids to float open. All right, nice. So then I'll just check in actually with all of our panelists. So we take that deep breath, clear the air a little bit just for a moment, and then I'd love to hear from you. So I think I lost you on the spotlights. I don't know if you're still here. There you are. I'll check in with you first, Eric, if that's all right. So you shared a lot of really beautiful things today, but I'm curious as to, because we're going to send you an intention bracelet. After all this, what would you like to create as an intent today that you would carry around with you, or that you could have in your rearview mirror or tack it on your wall, anywhere that you'd like to kind of encapsulate whatever you're feeling now? Thoughts?
Yeah, I would say, I think I mentioned this word, but just humility, the humility to accept that we don't know everything, the humility to learn from others, the humility to start small and build up. And I guess that also means like checking our egos. I think that helps both in life and in this work.
And where do you practice that, you think, most, or where does that show up for you, that idea of humility?
I get to work with a lot of great, knowledgeable people in education advocacy, and I'm just always in awe about their specialty. And just like, sometimes it means like shutting up and just listening, and just taking in the knowledge. So I think just, respecting those that have either a shared experience, a lived experience, or just years of work in a certain field, just appreciating the knowledge they bring to our work.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing, Eric. I'm actually going to write humility and put it right behind me, and we're going to capture some words as we move along today. But thank you so much for sharing. And I have a form that Kumbi, I think, is going to send you, so that I can make sure to capture these words from you all and be able to make those bracelets and send them to you. So keep my best for that. Demia, may I check in with you? What do you got? What would you like to set as your intention today?
I just started thinking about it, so I'm not gonna lie and say I've been thinking about it for a while. But I think I would say my word would be worthy. I think as minorities, especially me, I struggle with the self-care, and I always struggle with the idea of people wanting to hear me with such a lack of experience, and always feeling like I am not good enough to be in the spaces that I am in, and that's just a generational thing. And so for me to say that I'm worthy of being on this path that has been created for me is a very strong word for me to a daily recognition of just remembrance.
So powerful. How do you, I'm I know that we've got students here that I totally know that feeling and wanting to step up to be in that place of worthiness in a big space or in a challenge that you're not sure you're prepared for. How do you practice that? How do you take that idea of worthiness and bring it into your life?
I think the crazy thing is that I've been practicing it since I was born. I have always been in spaces that, even in my family, at times where I've been the oddball, or I've been the black sheep of the family, where I had to really, kind of myself be able to, I think, withhold that pain that it comes with it, and just being able to still live. I'm still here today, so I'm blessed. And so I think just resilience, honestly, I don't know where it comes from, but I think just knowing that I can help at least one person out to give them a better childhood than I had. I think it's the thing that drives me every day, because nobody should have gone through what I've gone through in my lifetime. And so I think that's the practice, the thing that just continues to drive me.
It's so powerful. And that you've already been through part of your journey. You've gotten here. So why not? What challenge can't you meet now?
Yeah.
Oh, you're ready.
I think I don't know what life has in store for me, but I hope it's a relaxation. I feel I'm 60 in my mind. Honestly, I'm like 80. I'm on the brink of death. That's what I am. I grind.
Oh, get ready. We hope you go to 300 at this rate.
Yeah, I was vibing with Harmony when she was talking about the chilling. I don't get to take naps. I haven't taken a nap since I was like 3 years old. So like, yeah, I'm vibing with that world.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, I'm gonna talk a little bit about that. Because I'm on that train. Like, we can't like nap at this conference, but if
I mean, we could, like, I don't know who's making the agenda. Let's keep it real. Cool said.
Yeah, I think we'll start with just some more deep breathing. And if you get a little tuckered, just take a snooze and come back with us when you're ready.
Yeah, I had a lot of practice in school. I wasn't the best kid.
Well, I appreciate you so much for sharing that with us, Jimmy. I think I'm gonna put this on the wall too. We're gonna kind of collect a bunch today, and then we'll take a look at them. So thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. I want to check in with Grace. Hey, Grace, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
What do you got for us? We're talking in just whatever intention that you want to connect with today. For you, what would you like to set?
I think for me, my intention is sustainability, not necessarily in like the environmental sense, but sustainability in being able to do the work for a long time. That's kind of what I'm intending to do. And so, sustaining myself when things are tough and when, I really just want to be like, wow, there's too many issues. I just want to give up. And remembering, we were talking about self-care and rest and sustaining myself through that, so that our movements can long-term not burn out. They can be sustainable for future generations. And that's kind of my intention in this space.
Yeah, that's powerful and important. And how do you practice that right now? What does that look like for you? Beyond the nap, which we did cover in detail a second ago, like what is built into that sustainability for you in your life?
Right now, for me, that really looks like asking for help when I need it, right? And being able to rely on my friends and the people who are also fighting for social justice, and telling them when I need to lean on them for support. And hoping to create, a system where they can also ask me when they need support. And I think that's really what makes the movement sustainable, is people asking each other for what they need and giving what they can. And so for me, sometimes if, I'm really overwhelmed, like asking a friend, like, hey, can you make me a meal? And then hopefully, you know, in the future, they'll be able to come back and ask me, like, hey, can you make me a meal? And in that way, we can all really take care of each other in a way that makes our community a better place.
That's beautiful, beautifully put. Thank you so much for sharing, Grace. Thank you. And I think we lost a few people from the panel that we could check in with, and perhaps we can check in with them a little later. I'm going to pass it off to Olivia or Chow so that they can take us out. I think we've got a break coming. Thank you all so much for sharing your intent with us today. And I'm going to put these up, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the bracelets and me making those, and I'll make them on camera later when I return at 4:40. But thank you so much for sharing. So take it away, Ruby.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you so much. Thank you to our panelists for sharing your knowledge with us. And thank you our participants for engaging to these conversations. So it is now the time for 30 minutes break. So please take your time to rest and come back by 2 p.m. for the performance by Thunderbird Racer. Thank you, everyone, and I'll see you soon.